Neerav sir has also joined. Sir, just give us few more minutes, then we'll start it. We're just waiting for a few more people to join. Okay, so people have joined with us, and more will be joining us in a few more minutes. So, meanwhile, let us just begin the session. I hope I'm audible to everyone. So, let's
Yes,
start.
ma'am. Yeah,
Okay, sir.
perfectly.
Very good evening to all of you. I welcome you all on behalf of UPID Noida in today's session on how to stay steady in career, a catastrophe perspective. I extend my warm welcome to Dr. Neerav Mandir, also thanking him for his precious time today. So now I would like to request Dr. Kumar Sambhav, HOD UPID Noida, to please share his thoughts and mark the beginning of this event today. So please say a few words.
Yeah, welcome, Dr. Nirav. I can see that you are the Chief Human Capital Officer and you have worked at multiple firms. And ours is a new institute. We started MBA last year itself. So I think your talk is going to be quite valuable, not only to our students but also to the faculty. To the faculty, and this is also going to be a repository for us for the institute. And also, I saw that you're the Chief Human Capital Officer. So this is a kind of new term for me. So earlier I was more acquainted with the human resource, but human capital is also a new term for me. So welcome once again. I hope all of us will gain from your talk and gain some insights also into this area. Welcome once again.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, sir, for your words. So, before we move ahead with the session today, let me just make you all aware about our very well renowned speaker, Dr. Nirav Modi. So, he's been working as a Chief Human Capital Officer with world's one of the largest diamond jewelry manufacturing and export conglomerate, Sri Ramakrishna Exports Private Limited, having revenue of more than 1.3 billion US dollars. Dr. Nirav has completed his postdoctoral fellowship from South Korea, PhD from USA, Advanced HRM from IIM Ahmedabad, MPhil, Postgraduate Diploma in Industrial Safety and Environmental Management, MSW, and NLP and BSc. He has also published many research papers in highly reputed national and international journals. Dr. Nirav has a strategic responsibility for SRK's global HR, administrations, SHE, compliance functions. He's also the project administrator for the state of art manufacturing facilities, which is certified with US Green Building Council. Dr. Neerav is also certified lead auditor for various standards such as ISO 9001. He's also the certified assessor for lean manufacturing, psychometric assessments, certified HR analytics, certified employee engagement professionals, and a lot more to add on into his basket. And he's also the certified independent director and life member IICA. And he has won many prestigious awards during his entire HR journey, few of which we can mention are the Youngest HR Professional Award of the Year 2018 by National Institute of Personnel Management, 100 Top HR Minds 2018 by Times Ascent, Most Influential HR Leaders in India 2016 by World HRD Congress. As a part of his honorary association, he is also the member of Institute of Directors, member Executive Council, Sri Ramakrishna Knowledge Foundation, co-chairman, CWC committee, and member HR committees. He is also associated with the KIEC International University, USA, as an adjunct professor. So, with this, we can easily understand that how renowned speaker we have with us today. Once again, thanking you a lot, sir, for sparing your time, and we are definitely looking forward to hear from you. It's over to you now. A very warm welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Reena. I hope I am audible to all of you.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Perfect. So thank you very much once again for this generous introduction, which I really think which I don't deserve. I was just hearing Mr. Kumar when he said like the Institute of Design is a newly established organization. So when he touched upon the word newly, I thought about it's completely a paradox, because even if we talk about the company part, every new company was once an old company, but every old company cannot become the new company. So it's completely kind of a paradox which he talked about. When I just got a request to talk about the university students.
Just one clarification, Dr. Neerav. We started MBA last year, but the design program has been running since 2017.
Perfect. So that was the paradox about, and it's completely overwhelming to just when I hear the Institute of Design, it's completely kind of a unique and distinct feature what I heard upon. So when I was sharing that, when I got the request to talk about for today's session, I thought what can be the best topic to talk to the students, and apparently today is a really auspicious day when we are celebrating a Teachers' Day across the world. And what can be the best day to talk to the gurus associated with this session along with the Sishyas? Because even we are going into the history, the Dronacharya would have not been the Dronacharya if he was not having the Arjuna. So today there is a perfect combos of Gurush and Sishya for this session. So I'd like to run a PPT, and I'll arguing my deliberations upon it in the due course of time. So let me just share my screen, and
yes, sir.
I hope you can see the PPT right now.
It's visible, sir.
Perfect. Sounds good. So when I was thinking about the topic I would be deliberating upon today, like how to stay steered in a career, a catastrophe perspective. When we are passing through, we all know that we are passing through a very extraordinary time, and we can really not avoid what is happening around us. Starting from the economic devastation till the health deterioration across the world, and the entire world is going through the pandemic. And if we really, if I may share some of the crucial data, so only till the month of August, as per the research done by the Center of Management of Center of Monitoring of Indian Economy, only till the month of August, so starting from March to August, in India, more than 28 million people have lost their job, which is quite significant numbers. If we go to the recent study, we have fall upon the GDP of almost 23.9%, and which is the current data. So days are not so rosy while we are talking about the current scenario. So I think the thing which we need to ponder upon is how to one is to be motivated all the time, because we are facing the scenario when it's completely obvious to lose the motivation at any given point of time, because gone are the days where one should be feeling overconfident to get always motivated at any given point of time. So we must ponder upon our thought that what are those parameters with which we can actually be motivated, especially to the students when they are passing through a tough time. Everything is running online, and nobody knows the scenario once you pass out from your respective institution. But what are those kind of paradoxes with which still you can be motivated and you can still do your best within your in your career? Just to start with, when we are talking about, because whenever you are doing your MBAs right now, all of you are studying, so you are learning the theories along with the various methods. So once you complete with your theory, and when you actually start working in the environment and the practical scenario, so it will be a kind of a skirmish for all of you. So when I'm referring to the skirmish, so it's all about the transforming your theoretical learning into the practical aspect, and that's how you are expected to do in the due course of time. So if I may quote one of the example of Mahabharata, when despite of having the sheer theoretical and practical knowledge, I referred the Arjuna and Dronacharya. So Arjuna, when he took the training and he is claimed to be one of the greatest archer of the mankind, so he was having all the theoretical knowledge which he learned from the Guru Dronacharya. And while having the Vanvas along with the Pandavas, he was also having the practical knowledge because he learned the practical aspect of the theoretical learning. But even though, despite of having the theoretical and the practical knowledge, when he actually went to the battlefield and when he sees that I have to fight against my own family, then he was completely shocked and stunned, and he could not think that what can be done in this regards. So this kind of scenario is actually happening in the current time, when the theoretical aspect is completely cannot be replicated into the practical aspect, because we are everything has become so VUCA, and we are actually practically seeing that situation that everything has become really VUCA. When everything is volatile, everything is uncertain, it's kind of a complex situation, and we are in an ambiguous time. So it is prudent that how to apply your theory into the practical manner. While doing so, I'll ponder upon some of the parameters which we look upon. So, especially in the terms of the career, and especially when you are there at the student level, the tenacity has to be so rich. The reason why I'm saying so, the tenacity, whatever you are doing, what you are going to do, you just need to ask a question: why I'm doing this, and why I'm being asked to do this. Because until and unless you are not getting why you are doing this, you won't be able to understand the pedagogy and the kind of root cause behind that particular act. So just to understand respective act and why we are doing this, the purpose has to be identified. The moment you ask why to your good self, that why I am doing this, ultimately it gets linked to the purpose of that particular did and the act. So one is really critical that one should be asking before doing any act that why I am doing this. And the second benefit what one would be getting after asking this question why I'm linking it to the purpose is that once you do it and once you deep dive into the root cause of it, then the most difficult job what you are expected to do can become a kind of easiest job in the world. So when we are talking about the strategy to increase the productivity and how we can build and increase upon the productivity part, so one is to, especially at the student life and doing your kind of a profound career over the due course of time, the cascading of goals is really important. When I'm seeing cascading of goals, that if we are doing anything, one the picture might be looking very big and almost impossible to do. But when you are actually cascading that particular task into a small chunks, so it will really be more feasible to accomplish the small tasks. Suppose if I talk about casting, suppose you have defined the due course of time that you are supposed to study for 2 years in your MBA, and if you define the entire journey of 2 years into the small journey, like the what I'm supposed to do per quarter, what I'm supposed to do per month, what I'm supposed to do per day, and even to the hourly level. And if you accomplish a small task by achieving those small goals, it will be really be helping you to ponder upon and to leverage upon the confidence level what you are getting, and you can then define the entire roadmap, because to get where you want to go, first you need to know where you are. And that's how the cascading of the goals, especially into the small pieces, can help you to build the strategy and to increase upon your productivity at the large. The second point I would like to ponder upon is one is to really be feeling optimistic enough. When we are thinking about the optimisticity within the given scenario, generally two aspects comes into mind. That once we see that okay, any task being given to you, that you feel that it is possible, and the second thought which you might think is really not possible. But there is very thin difference between the possibility and the non-possibility of that particular task when one talks about that how we can leverage the possibility of that particular thing. So one is to put their best effort behind making them possible, and one is to believe enough that okay, I'll be able to do it, because it's not always possible that the task which you are going to do, someone might have done that task in the earlier times, and someone might not have done that task in the earlier times. So even if you are supposed to do that task for the first time, one should be feeling confident enough that okay, I'll be doing that task in a very profound manner. The moment you think on the other side that you are think that it's really not possible to do that task, ultimately it gives the negativity, and the moment you feel negative about that particular task, it's really becoming the easiest task becomes more and more, it gets hardening, and ultimately you keep on doing on the other side of the pyramid. So the reason why I'm saying that one is to be optimistic is because the moment, as I said earlier also, that apart from the other the certain laws of the universe, majority of the things are possible in this world, and each the word impossible says I am possible. So one is to be optimistic enough and start that task in a kind of a taking a tiny step, because it's really not expected that you are supposed to accomplish that task in a due course of time at a rapid state, but one is to define that particular task into a small steps, and one is to accomplish those small steps, and then apparently doing that task. The moment you accomplish those small steps, the confidence level will be built upon, and once the confidence level will be built upon, then ultimately the belief system will be widened up, and you will be having that courage that okay, I'll be able to accomplish that particular task. The third point which I would like to talk about, that one is to accept the failure. When I'm saying accepting the failure is like one should not be feeling shy by accepting their own failure, because the moment one will be feeling shy, it's like one is really be critical enough that I can quote upon the example of Thomas Alva Edison when he invented the bulb, and the reporter apparently asked him that it took almost more than 1,000 attempts to build that particular bulb. So you failed for more than 1,000 times, but the optimistic part of and the reply of Thomas Alva Edison was that it was not that I have failed for more than 1,000 times, but the procedure of making the bulb was kind of 1,000 steps. So how we can actually be modifying the failures into the opportunity, and we are living in a really extraordinary time that we really need to enhance the productivity of ours and just transforming all the challenges what we are having into the opportunities part. If I may quote some of the example, if like any defense personnel, any journalist there, from the any defense background, any business person or any sports person, they really don't rely upon the one strategy. And I I recommend one book to the students when General George Maddon was written a book on the World War II experiences. The book name is War as I Knew It. So one should not be only rely upon a single strategy, because you never know till the time you actually execute the strategy whether to that strategy will work upon or not. So one has to define a kind of a plan A, B, and C, and so on, so that if plan A fails, that you can immediately shift upon plan B, and if plan B fails, you can apparently shift upon plan C, and ultimately you can succeed in your due task or due assignment. So one has to be anticipative enough to just deal with that particular task, and one should be feeling that and one should be prepared with the contingency plan that we talk about, that okay, if it's not working, then I have to immediately be moving on a particular thing. So one has to be ideally also think about that it's not always required that we need to face failures, and we are uh, we are doing the work by we are learning, and we are doing the work by learning small things, and the moment we fail we learn new things. So rather than using the word failing in something, it's like we are learning something. And I would like to share one of the story of IBM in those days of when General Johnson was the chairman of the IBM late almost 1940s, when the World War II was going on. And that time IBM was a technology company, and it was one of the vertical of the IBM was also there into defense. And they took part in one of the defense tender, and due to the mistake of one manager, IBM almost lose the contract of $1 million at that time. Imagine the kind of amount which was the quantum of $1 million in 1942. So when that manager put their papers, because he realized that I failed in my task and I don't deserve to be the part of this company, and he put the papers to the chairman, General Johnson. And when the approach the chairman, rather than firing him for the mistake what he has done, General Johnson very wisely said, you're not failed to that the company lose $1 million contract, but company has invested $1 million in your learning. So it's like seeing this thing from a different perspective is really making a sense, and that's how ideally our mentors are ideally supposed to teach us. And one should not be feeling that okay, if having a fear that okay, I'll be not succeeding in that particular task, that's the reason I should not be starting new, or I should not be doing that task, because ultimately you end up being lazy and you won't be able to achieve something really distinct and unique in your life, because it's proven that to achieve the extraordinary thing, you are supposed to do the extraordinary deeds. Until and unless you won't be able to do it. The fourth aspect which I like to talk about, the ecosystem. There's the image of the World Trade Center, which might be the picture of before December 2019. If one visits the World Trade Center, the Times Square, especially at this picture, what would be the scenario one would be seeing? The people would not be following the social distancing, and the place might not be so crowded as it's being seen in this picture. So social conditioning is really hard to change, because it's not there in our control with the family we born. It's not there in our control with the views of we are brainstormed with in our respective family, and it's not there in our control the kind of upbringing which we are supposed to get from our family. But the moment one becomes the adult, one leads their own nuances of the upbringing, and then one can believe into the own theories that how the world is look like, and one can see from the different perspective. So especially during this pandemic time, when you're seeing the news and the gossip and the entertainment part and the kind of a fear mongering is actually happening, that they show that per day rises in the COVID cases, and they show the mortality rate, the how many deaths are happening. But one has to really look beyond out of this fear mongering, and one has to keep on focusing that how within this time I can focus on myself. I also talk about the crisis principle, in which we say like there's a crisis principle called 10, 18, and 10, when 10% of the people are there in a panic mode due to this fear mongering through news channels and the media and all that. They are really in panic. They don't know what to do, and they are stuck. 80% of the people, especially feeling that they are in stun mode, where I'm referring to the stun modes, where they are actually blank. They've understood the situation, but they landed on the moon, because rather than it has become the kind of attitude issue for both of the countries, that who will be reaching us to the moon and will be putting their first step on the moon, and ultimately the Apollo 11 landed there. So one is to be agile enough, and one is to be kind of thoughtful enough to see that whatever the competition or the healthy competition, what you are doing along with your with your peers or the superiors, it has to be ethical enough, because if you really want to succeed on a long-term basis, that particular competition should be there in an ethical manner, and that is the only thing which gives you the immense amount of motivation, especially during this challenging time. And when we are talking about the time, we should be thoughtful enough to understand the significance of the time, because that is the only thing which we are having in very unique and distinct, that each and every people on this earth who is enjoying the time, all are having the constraint that all are having the 24-hour time, and whatever we are doing, we are supposed to do it in those 24 hours, because we may money back, we may do the money back, we may do, but the back of the time, till the time the time machine can be invented, it's not possible. So it is really significant. It should be at kind of agile, it should be realistic also, and it should be time bound, and that's how we can understand the significance of time, because procrastination doesn't lead us anywhere. If we are thinking that by sitting idle we should be getting all the things and getting all the luxuries of the life, then one is actually lying in the dilemma, and it's nothing more than a myth. So the moment you think that, okay, I should be flexible enough, I should be agile enough to start my journey in the due course of time and working on a respective project, so without wasting time. The supposition which I would like to talk about is the whatever you are doing as of now in your learning, by learning the theories during your MBA. So knowledge without application is inadequate, and knowledge without application becomes with the application becomes the astuteness. So the moment you complete your theory, and the moment you be into the incorporate career, that your journey, the second part of your journey start is the applying the theory into the execution, and do the things in your respective manner. So rather than getting it to stretch, because I have been told it will be a 30-35 minutes talk followed by the question and answer. So this is my credential. You can Professor Leena or Professor Kumar. If any students are having any kind of a question, I'll be more than happy to address those questions. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. It was indeed a very fruitful session, and a lot of insights students might have gone through. Students, now we have the query session, so you may put up your questions directly. You can unmute your mics, you can ask your questions, you can put up your questions. So I will address those questions directly. So who is going to come first?
Yes, ma'am, I have a question.
Okay, Piyush. Yeah.
Sir, in in the present situation, people are doing their job, and you talk about
Piyush, your voice is not audible.
It's breaking, Piyush. Come up again. Piyush? Piyush, your voice is breaking. You can come up again. Okay, maybe another question. Maybe he might be facing some network issues with him. Another person can come up. Anuj? And those who are facing any issues with their mics, they may post their questions in the chat box. We can address them from here also.
Okay, if nobody is asking, then let me pose a comment here. So, competition and competence are two very closely related words. So, many times what we naturally aspire for is to gain competence, but many times we enter into competition, and that may not be healthy all the time. So, one has to make a very fine distinction between the two. So, would you like to comment upon this, Dr. Nirav? You are muted.
Yeah, your voice was a bit breaking. If you can just slightly summarize the question.
Okay, I just saying that there are two words: competence and competition. So basically, what we aspire for is competence, you know. But many times, in place of going for competence, you know, which can have some absolute sense, we enter into competition, and that may be painful at times. And there also, no, like competition, like when you say healthy competition. So essentially, what you mean to say is by emulating others, you know, we can develop our competence. This is something that you mean to convey, I suppose. So could you clarify upon this a little bit?
So what I personally, as I said in my presentation also, Mr. Kumar, that we always view with the groups. When I was referring to that particular marker, the competition should be there. But the point which I wanted to make over there was that the competition should not be there with the own self. It should be always there with the companion, because that's how we compute with other person. And when we are doing that competition with our peers or the competitor, then actually we are leveraging the presence of that particular individual. And then that's the reason why we do the things in a different manner, because we really want to do some extraordinary, and we really want to give that extraordinary edge to that particular task or to the particular person. Because and I recommend the book, one of the book to the students, which clearly is written by a gentleman called Dow Sidman, and the name of that book is How. And in this book is clearly said that it is no longer that what you do that sets you apart from other, but how you do what you do makes the difference. So when it comes to the competition, it's really so one should be flexible and creative enough to do the same thing in a different manner, and that's how it leads to the healthy competition. That's my submission to that particular concern.
Let me thank you first that you gave so many tips to our students, and that is quite beneficial for their progress and growth. Yeah.
We have few questions. One question which has been put up by Abhishek Gupta. He's asking that what will be the biggest challenge in the future urban disaster response and also the management, which are related to online platforms. What biggest challenges we can face?
I really would like to compliment Abhishek, because it's pretty apt question when we are passing through an extraordinary time. The biggest challenge, especially if I reflect upon the student part, is the skill set. Because as per the recent research by the Cambridge, whatever the skill set existing in this world, that wouldn't be there in 2025. So more than 45% of the skill set going to be replaced in this world by 2025. The biggest challenge for the student career is how you can invest in the learning part, as I also reflect upon Alvin Toffler's quote, that one has to keep on doing the learning and learning and relearning part, and only by that mean one can be sustained in this cutthroat, because we are also referring to the urban disaster. So when we are working in the corporate, it's kind of a cutthroat competition, and I also reflect upon the current data that more than 28 million people have lost their job only in last 4 or 5 months. So until unless you invest in the investing in learning the new and new skills, which is really niche and the premium enough, so that you can sustain the environment. So that's, I think, the biggest investment what any student can have in their career.
Thank you, sir. I hope, Abhishek, that that is clear to you. Okay, so one more question which we have is that from Ms. Apni, she's saying that there is a cutthroat competition and has been a major part of the life in different aspects in the places, which somehow actually affects the mental health of the people also and overall personality. So, can some light be shed upon this particular concept, that how it can be coped up with, how they can cope up with it?
Yeah, very apt question, Avni, from the current catastrophe, because all of us are actually struggling with the kind of a mental delusion that we really don't want. And I also reflect upon the crisis principle, how we are psychologically, they are defined into the three various stages: the panic mode, stun mode, and the creative mode. And now the organizations also nowadays are putting so much weightage on the mental health, because the majority of the organizations, especially in the service sector, are working from home, and they're also working for home. So there is also a thin line between working for home and working from home. So just to minimize the psychological delusion and the uh, kind of a behaving upon the good aspect of the mental health. So one has to keep on do the self introspection, that okay, whatever I am doing, because we are not habitual of doing the such kind of or working in such kind of scenario. So one has to keep on evolving and keep on doing the self introspection, with which one can actually do the kind of a self meditation, is really be helping the students and any of the professionals while working in a, especially a tough time. So I think, I hope I'm clear on the question being asked by Avni.
To hope the same. That was indeed a very well answered. Before I move on to someone else's question, I also have one question to be answered upon. So, can you suggest that every individual have a different psychological makeup, right? So, do you think that it can be modified by self-assessment?
As I also referred, Professor Leena, in my presentation, that we really don't have any control in the family we born in, the family or the upbringing part, which we have grown in the respective family. But once we become adult, we can do some self correction in the kind of a psychological behavior of that particular persona. So just to, as I said, that to get where you want to go, first you need to know where you are. So until the time one person doesn't have a self-reflection, that okay, these are the areas of improvement in my personality, and I'm supposed to improve upon these areas. Till the time the person doesn't realize by him or herself, he won't be able to do that improvisation into that particular behavior. And one should, that's a role of a coach or a mentor, and that's why I just pinch upon that one should be having enough coach or a mentor or the friends or even the kind of a gurus in respective life, so that they can suggest that okay, these are the things, these are the area where you need to improve upon. And I firmly believe that one should be doing, or one can do a kind of self improvisation till the certain aspect in their respective life.
Definitely. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Piyush have another question for us. He's asking that how can we motivate ourselves in the situation where, in this pandemic, where people are losing their jobs and they're not getting any hope for the better future. So what can people do in this type of situations? I mean, it's something to deal with the failure kind of part.
Yeah, but I think Piyush, as I reflected upon the people are losing the job. I only shared the data of India that within 5 months, 28 million people have lost their job. If you see the US scenario till the time, till the August end, more than 8 million people have lost their job only in US. But having said that, we should not be wasting a good crisis, and we are really in a crisis situation. So, if any crisis arises, along with the crisis, one has also ponder upon the opportunities part. So, you might have got or read in the news also that till the time just before the pandemic, we were not making the personal protective equipments in India. So all the PPE kits, the N95, we were importing it from China and respective countries. But till moment, India has become the second largest exporter of the PPE kits and the N95s. So there was an opportunity for those manufacturers who were not doing anything in that particular segment, but due to this pandemic, that opportunity arose, and apparently we become the second largest exporter of that PPE kits. So that's how one should be finding that okay, people are losing their job, but what are those skill set which I can achieve and I can improve upon, so that at least I can be. It's like the common principle, survival for the fittest. So I can be survive upon in that cutthroat competition, and my job would be remain safe in that due course of time. So that identification has to be there on an individual level, and that would really help. I must tell you, Piyush.
Yeah, so he has also something add on about it. He's also asking that you mentioned about Thomas Edison that he failed many times.
Hmm.
But if in current scenario we see that if somebody fails, people starts teasing and using different kind of perception for that person. So how that person can tackle such situation?
I think so. You might have. It's pretty apt question, Piyush, and one should be uplifting themselves enough on the enough height where one should not bother what the other person is, because if we are keep on bothering what the others are being judgmental about, then we won't be able to accomplish our own task. So don't you think that when Thomas Alva Edison almost failed for the 1,000 times, he might not have been teased by someone, their competitors or the peers or their superiors, of what you are doing, you are not doing nothing, and you almost failed for 1,000 times. But he moved upon that particular thing, and he lifted himself upon those failures and keep on invested their head time to that particular task. So one has to keep on doing that, and one should not be bothered about what others are saying, because the moment you do so, you won't be able to focus 100% on that particular task, and then the failure ratio might increase. So my submission to that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Any more questions that we have? You can unmute your mic.
Yeah, Dr. Nero, let me ask another question. Like, this is the age of Industry 4.0, and you can see that modern technologies such as IoT, automation, artificial intelligence, they are going to occupy the market. And at the same time, we are trying to make our country a manufacturing hub, and we are also uh, buying for Google for local. Now, if you put these two things together, so we are not equipped, for IoT and artificial intelligence and such technologies. Our local manufacturing sector is still struggling with the old technologies and methods and practices. So, as a person of management, how do you see the way forward for our country, so that we can make the production localized also, at the same time we can cope up with the, or I say, be at par with the Industry 4.0 pattern.
I completely understood. Very wise question, Professor Kumar. And as I said earlier, we should be moving ourselves ahead from the kind of general scenario. Having said that, I really believe that when we are talking about Industry 4.0, it's not like that everything will be high tech and everything will be automated, everything will be run by the IoTs and the robotics. but it should be a perfect combination of high tech and high touch. So the only thing which the technology cannot replace even after 100 years of time is the humankind, because ultimately humans are inventing the technology. I also referred the example of Nokia, that which we are the model of Nokia which we are using 15 years back, and now we are using the ultimate smartphone, having all the facilities, and the facilities and the technology enhance even down 5 years down the line. But we have to really move upon with the generalized scenario. Suppose nowadays even the population are busy in making the statements, whether you might have read in the newspaper also a senior advocate from the Supreme Court being penalized of 1 rupee by doing the contempt of the court, and people are busy doing the contemplation of that, despite of the fact that the millions of cases are pending in the high courts and Supreme Court. So what is more important when we are talking about Industry 4.0, and where 90% of the organizations in India belongs to the technological advancement is kind of a more challenging task for them. But until and unless we identify the need and we really derive upon, because Diwali is like coming closure, and during every Diwali we light the LED lamps made in China, where the China is doing the inclusion in the LSC. But have we identified the dependency over the China, especially with respect to the electronic goods, which we don't make, and we are completely relying on China to just get it imported? So until unless we don't realize that kind of a need, because need is kind of a mother of innovation, and just to reflect upon, first we need to realize on those aspects, and then in line of those realization we should be start working on that particular path to when we are talking about the Industry 4.0, and that will be a kind of a Industry 4.0 in a true sense, rather than just a jargon what we generally use nowadays, Mr. Kumar.
Yeah. Let me mention just one thing, that we have been working on one district, one product scheme of the government, UP government. And basically in that scheme, we are trying to have industry academia collaboration. And I think that can be a good channel to go ahead, because the kind of technologies that are required at the localized level, they are not very hi-fi. And our students of engineering are capable enough to develop such devices which can make the process little automatic, quality can be improved, and unethical practices can be tackled. So I think that could be another, just it occurred to me, that another way of going forward. And in fact, if we make it as a national policy to, because in US, if you see, all the universities are working hand in hand with the industries, right? And in our country, academia and industry are quite isolated. The resources that are available in the academia are not available to the industries, and the problems that are there in the industries are not being envisaged by the academia. And here the government has a good role to play, even the social sector has a good role to play. So something from your side as a comment upon this?
As you rightly mentioned upon, in India especially, there is a huge gap between the industry and the academia. And both of these sectors are blaming each other. The industries are saying the academia is not agile and practical enough to teach their students the current scenario, what is actually happening within the industry. At the academia level, they are blaming the industry that they are not supporting the academia and the students, so that the students can actually learn the practical scenario. And that's how it's also reflected in my presentation, that it has to go hand in hand. So it's kind of a complete paradox, but at one point of time or one stage, the industry is not getting the competent students or the candidates to do the kind of one can build their prospective career within the corporates. At other side, the students are not getting the desired jobs, because they are saying that, okay, I am not getting my desired job, and industry is not providing the jobs. Just today, you might have read the article that the government of India have kind of opposed their recruitment and entirely. And for any new recruitment, one has to take the approval from the finance ministry. So imagine the scenario. Forget about the corporates who are doing the retrenchment and the jobs being lost in the private sector. Even now, government is like making a pose on the new recruitment, because even they would like to reduce the burden of the wages which is being levied upon to the government of India and respective state governments. So, what scenario we are talking about? If the scenario is such, then as I said earlier, the only way to be sustainable and be relevant in the current and the extraordinary time is to keep on investing in the skill set and learning new things which are new in the market and which are really niche and premium, so that you cannot be overplaced or be replaced by anyone. My take on that, Mr. Kumar.
I think Abhishek has something to ask. Yeah, Lina ma'am.
Yes, sir. We have one more question from Abhishek, sir. He's asking that we don't see a lot of stories around failures and how after failing at multiple steps one grows, but they can be really motivating for others. So we would like to know from you, sir, that if you could share any such instances from your long and inspiring journey about failures and then growing up ahead step by step.
You are pretty right, Abhishek. People generally refrain to share their failure story because they all wants to share their success stories and publish a book and through a case study and all. But people really do refrain to share their kind of failure stories. But if I may go in the history, one of the great story which I recall is the story of Mahabharata, when the Pandavas were taking the guidance from Guru Drona, and today is a teacher's day, so I would like to keep my focus to the Guru and Shishya relationship, and apparently to your question of the failure story. So there was a character in Mahabharata called Eklavya. That particular character was even competent enough in comparison of Arjuna, but he was not being allowed to take the kind of a learning from Guru Drona through various reasons. So when he was being rejected by Guru Drona that you are not eligible to take the learnings from me, he actually did, and we all know the entire story, that he actually built the statue of Eklavya and started do the learning on that part. So by doing the statue, that one of the incident happened which is not being really covered in the Mahabharata, but it's there. And so the incident was when he has completed the learning of the archery. He has and then Guru Dronacharya was having a dog, and the dog used to roam around in the jungles. So one day, dog used to reach to that statue, and Eklavya seen that the dog is actually touching the statue, and that the Eklavya felt offended. He shoot an arrow which actually dwells upon the mouth of the dog, and when the dog reaches to the Dronacharya, he sees that that particular person was having the enough competency to shoot that arrow, and the dog was not hurt, and apparently the mouth got shut. So the Dronacharya was curious enough that who is having that particular skill set, who has done the archery of this kind. Even Arjuna could not have done that. And then when he went into the jungle and sees the own statue and asked the Eklavya that was it you? And then he reflected upon that I was there. So, and then at that time when he knew that Eklavya was capable enough to do the things which even Arjuna might not have done that. So at that time he asked for the thumb, and by realizing that if he is not having the thumb, that he won't be able to practice the archery. So that was a failure scenario for Eklavya. And imagine, you might not be knowing the entire story, and then he was blessed by Dronacharya that though I am taking the one thumb of yours, but you will be remembered in the history. So even if you see the current methodology or the current practice of archery, you might please see the videos of the Olympics, and the archery happens in the Olympics. They are only using the 4 fingers. The current archery, the advanced archery practice in the current time is only be relying upon the 4 fingers. They are not using their thumbs to throw the arrow and to shoot it. So the Eklavya was blessed enough that his skill set is still being survived because it was clearly distinct and unique enough. Arjuna was using the thumb, but that skill is not being reflected upon anymore. So this is the kind of a failure story which we really need to read upon, and kind of it gives a different kind of a motivation to just stay steered in the respective life. I hope I answered your question, Abhishek.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. It was indeed a very good example. So, any more questions we have from anyone? Isn't that? No more questions from anyone? So, thank you so much. It was a great session with you as expected. And we have a lot of valuable takeaways from today's session. It really proved to be really fruitful. And also, we are grateful for the time and effort taken by you to share your thoughts and experiences with us. Thank you so much. And Dr. Kumar Sambhu, sir, would you please like to say something and close the event with this?
Yeah, I already interacted too much with Dr. Nirav, so thanks a lot for offering this session to us, and it was quite enlightening. We talked about so many issues, and a good thing is that we gave so many tips to our students, and that is going to be quite valuable to the students. So thank you once again.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's really I'm really obliged to be invited, and thank you once again, and happy Teachers' Day to all the gurus and the shishyas.
Same to you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you so much. Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you all.